I am Michelle with 2 L's.
And I'm Natalie the Red.
And we are Force of Light Entertainment. And today we are going to be discussing, you guys know, we've been covering both Stranger Things Season 4 and Kenobi. And you also know that we really loved Stranger Things 4.
Yes.
And we've been very disappointed, to say the least, with Kenobi. So we're going to discuss, because to me, I know, when you watch Stranger Things 4 to Kenobi, there's this stark contrast of good writing and bad writing. So today we wanted to bring in a friend of ours from the Salty...
We wanted to bring in an expert.
We did. We wanted an expert on it. So we are bringing in our friend from the Salty Nerd podcast. Matt, how you doing today?
I'm really excited to meet your expert. Wondering when they're going to show up. I'm doing great. Thank you, ladies, for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, well, thank you for having me.
Yes.
And those of you watching, over at the Salty Nerd, Matt has been doing his own version of breakdowns of Kenobi, where he talks about all the bad writing in them. The last one genuinely had Natalie and I in tears, the opening.
I did. I was on the ground.
Justice for Wade.
Wade! Yeah,
Wade!
R.I.P. Wade.
R.I.P.
He was
Wade.
with us only for a moment, but it was impactful.
It was the best moment of my life.
I think it was so good too that the comedy of the little bit you did hit me so hard, because I realized I didn't even notice Wade. Like when I was watching it, it's like he just kind of would have passed, and I wouldn't even have made the connection that was the guy that went down.
I had to watch the episode 3 times to figure out who he was. It was weird.
That's horrible.
And it was such like an emotion. Like after he died, like the characters were so broken up. And I'm like, well, first of all, who's this Asian girl? Like I don't recognize her.
Yeah.
And why is she so upset? Like it was terrible. And then you had Ice Cube's son. Who is
that really his son, or are we just named it? Okay,
no, that's O'Shea Jackson. That's Ice Cube's firstborn son. He actually played Ice Cube in Straight Outta Compton.
Okay,
and he just showed up in this episode. I was like, oh my god, that's mini Ice Cube. I want more of his character, and it's just like we got like 2 seconds of him as well. It feels like kind of a throwaway.
Yeah.
So
they probably won't go back to him either.
Yeah, but I'm hoping that Wade actually survived the crash into the water and he's just kind of like chilling out on a raft out there, and he comes back triumphantly.
We can only hope.
I'm going to write some fan fiction just focusing on Wade and his adventures. So
he's the best of us all.
Oh, he's the best part of the Kenobi series so far. Like, did you see how he shot his speeder things at Reva? I mean, no one else has done that. He's a hero.
He is a hero.
The real MVP.
He is.
He is. I mean, he's done more against the Inquisitors than Kenobi has thus far. So,
and they basically indicate that was the beginning of the rebellion, because she says
really?
that I guess we're at war now. So I just want people, when you rewatch the original trilogy and they're celebrating across the galaxy, to realize it all started with Wade.
Wade was the match that struck the fire that lit the rebellion that burned down the Empire.
Oh gosh. Well, we're going to get into more talk like this. Matt, before we get started, I wanted to give them, or let you tell us your pedigree, kind of your background in writing and film school, just so they know where you come from in this.
Well, I don't know if you guys know this about me or not, but I am a blue check mark on Twitter, so you don't really need to know anything about my background. Just kind of have to assume that I know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so like ever since I was in high school, I wanted to be a filmmaker, and it all started when I saw Terminator 2 in the theater, and I was blown away by I was blown away by the special effects, and I originally wanted to be a special effects artist. And so like I started doing research into like creature effects and makeup effects and models and stuff like that. And I eventually came to realize that the director was the guy who told the special effects artist what to do. I was like, that sounds like more up my alley. And so I started learning about film directing and producing, and I just like read every book I could get my hands on. And that led me to go into film school. And I got a bachelor's degree in communications from Penn State University, which is where I went to film school. And from there, I had written a script that was a semifinalist in the Nickel Fellowship screenwriting competition way back in like 2000 or 2001, I forget which. And that got me an acceptance into the Los Angeles Film School feature development program. And so I moved out to LA to attend the program. And there I made a movie with Jeremy Renner, who went on to do like, Hawkeye and the Avengers and his own Disney Plus series. So that got accepted. That film I made with him got accepted into the Cannes Film Festival in about 2004. And so I worked in Hollywood for like a couple of years, didn't get anything else made. I was trying to get a feature going with Jeremy, and who the hell is Jeremy Renner? And they're like, we want Josh Hartnett in this movie. I was like, nah, man, Jeremy's the guy to go with. And I was, a first-time director, and Jeremy had just won like an Independent Spirit Award for his role in Dahmer, and nobody wanted to take a chance on us, especially like we were asking for like $3 million for like this con artist movie that I wanted to make. And everyone was just like, no, we gotta, we can't make anything for less than 10 million. So like it kind of died on the vine there. And I got really sick of being a professional beggar, going to people being like, please give me money. And so when the housing crisis hit back in, was it 08 or 09, something like that?
Yes.
I kind of packed up my things. I moved out to Vegas in 2012. And I was really disaffected with the entertainment industry. And so I decided to move from writing screenplays and trying to make movies to working on novels, because, you don't need producers, cast, crew, equipment, or anything like that. You just need yourself and a computer and, a lot of free time. And so I'm now a published novelist. I've got like 10 books or something like that published out there.
Awesome.
That you can find.
That is awesome.
And so as a novelist, I spent like decades like learning about the craft of storytelling. I went to numerous seminars. I went to school. I took classes. I sat down and I've studied stuff. I've broken down movies. I've listened to God knows how many director commentaries and writer commentaries. And having worked in the industry, I've actually gotten to go to film festivals and meet with some of my heroes and sit down and talk to them, get advice from them. And so the way I watch movies and TV shows, and basically the way I consume narratives, is from a very analytical perspective. So I can see the matrix when I'm watching a movie, right? And it annoys the hell out of the people I watch movies with, because I'll sit there and I'll start breaking down stuff. And they're like, can't you just enjoy the movie? I'm like, oh, this is how I enjoy the movies. It's breaking it down. So, that's my background, and that's kind of my role on the Salty Nerd podcast. I'm like the film guy. And so I'm there to kind of school them on the language of film and the how to break down the elements of storytelling and in ways that are correct and incorrect and stuff like that. And they're just there to get drunk and talk crap about what it is they're watching. So it's a good balance.
I would have to say that I think it was around the Dune episode. I started realizing I'm like, Matt and I typically feel the same way about a movie.
And then I'm like, do I have good taste?
He's like, if you agree with me, yes.
Yes. Well, what's funny about this is that there's always that argument about subjectivity and whether or not if you enjoy something, is it good? And if you don't enjoy something, is it bad? And to me, I'm like, people are free to enjoy whatever it is they want, even the bad stuff. But if you look at it from an objective point of view, and there is a such thing as objectivity when it comes to art and creativity and stuff like that, if you analyze it from the perspective of someone involved in the trade craft, it's there are standards which need to be met in order to enhance the enjoyment of the maximum potential of the audience. So if you do stuff incorrectly, there's going to be people out there that still enjoy it, but there could be more people that enjoy it if you do things the right way. And there is a right and wrong way, just when it comes to art, in respect to what has been firmly established over time to work consistently, as opposed to what is experimental or untested or just has proven to not work over time.
Yes.
So
well, and that's why we wanted to bring on Matt today to discuss, again, as I was saying at the beginning, I obviously have not been to film school or any of that, but apparently I have good taste because I usually agree with Matt. But anyways,
Yeah, I think you actually sent me a message where you were like, I know you're getting a lot of flack for what you just said about this one movie, but I kind of agree with you.
yeah, I did. I was like, I agree with you on this. Totally. But anyways, just as a viewer, someone who likes this stuff, I, of course, love Star Wars, love Stranger Things. I've got Stranger Things stuff and Star Wars stuff behind us, and was excited for both. Love Kenobi. He's one of my favorite Jedi. Vader coming back. That should be exciting, right?
Yeah.
It should be a big deal. So I was excited, but also a little hesitant because I didn't know who was writing the show, and I knew Filoni or anyone that I kind of had some trust with wasn't writing the show. And so I watched the first 2 episodes of Kenobi, and it was like, eh. And then I go to Stranger Things, and I watch all 7 of Volume 1. And so I couldn't help but compare these 2 properties. And of course, they were competing head to head that day for viewership and stuff. And as I watch, it's just like, to me, Stranger Things totally pulls back the veil of how bad the writing for Kenobi is. Like, because one is so good and the other one is so bad. So I just want to
Michelle, why do you have to say so bad?
It's so bad.
Michelle's being harsh.
So it's just like, I wanted to get kind of some of your takes. And I think a good place we could even start is we laughingly brought up Wade, the character in episode 4.
Best character in Star Wars.
You heard it here.
Yeah.
In episode 4 of Kenobi, they have a random dude that you see not even speak for a few moments. And then later in the episode, he dies.
And we're supposed to care.
They make it all dramatic.
Well, he speaks, and then his friend is like, "Shut up, Wade." And it's like, I was like, "Ooh, I'm intrigued."
So let's compare that, because Wade was like supposed to be the impactful death thus far in Kenobi. Let's compare that to episode 1 of volume 1 of Stranger Things 4 to the character of Chrissy. We're introduced to this cheerleader at the very beginning. And
I mean, they give time to set up her before.
Yes.
I mean, in a sense.
And of course, spoilers here, obviously. Of course, at the very end of that episode, we see that very disturbing death with Chrissy's death, which is impactful because they take time to establish.
Well, it makes it more frightening when it happens to her, because you see what she's been going through. You see some of her personal struggles. So then when it happens, it's a little more impactful, I think, to the viewer.
Yes. So any thoughts on that? Because of course, at this point in Stranger Things, there's been 3 young people die, and all of them got more set up than Wade.
Well, it's not just Wade that they didn't really set up all that much. Like, they're introducing a lot of kind of interesting characters in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, but they're not really giving them the attention that they need in order to resonate with the audience. So, for instance, you have the fake Jedi in episode 2, played by Kumail Nanjiani.
Yes. Yes.
I'm probably butchering his name, but he's a great actor. I remember watching him in this Mark Paul Gosselaar show, like way back when, about 2 lawyers, and he's kind of blown up since then. And he was in the Eternals, and the idea of a guy pretending to be a Jedi who's just kind of like this con man has such great potential. I was like, oh my god, like why isn't he Obi-Wan's sidekick in this episode? And then you have the Sand Snake from Game of Thrones who shows up, and she's like the undercover Imperial. I think her name's Talia, or Tala, something like that. And then you have Baby Ice Cube, O'Shea Jackson. I forget his name because he had like 2 seconds of screen time, but like he's the guy who's running the Underground Railroad for Jedi. They give him like 2 seconds of backstory. Like, we learned that his wife was like Force sensitive or something like that. She got killed by the Inquisitors, and that's why he's doing this. Then of course we got Wade, who's like the ultimate Star Wars character, like true hero. And his friend, the Asian lady, who like I don't even think we got her name. It was very strange, but there are all these characters that are set up within the context of the show that get like 2 seconds of character development, and we're supposed to care about them. And that's not really how character development works. Like, as a writer or as a storyteller, you have to think about, okay, what is it that creates an emotional connection between the audience and a character? And so when I was learning about storytelling and screenwriting and stuff like that, there were like 4 rules that writers have to instantly make an audience connect with a character. The first one is to put them in some type of jeopardy. So they're instantly in danger. The second one is to make them funny. The third one is to give them some type of undeserved misfortune so that audiences sympathize with them. And the last one is to make them really good at their job. So, it's basically like, sympathy for bad stuff happening or empathy for them being like really capable or interesting or fun or something like that. And so like those are the 4 things that you always want to do when you're establishing a character to have the audience connect with them as quick as possible.
Well,
and if you look at Stranger Things,
yes, okay, keep going.
So, well, the funny thing is like Obi-Wan is like what 6 episodes long, right? That's like
Yes.
the run of the first season. And if you look at Stranger Things, what we've gotten so far in season 4 is 7 episodes, right? So it's only like one more episode than what Kenobi's given us, even though like each episode's like an hour 15, hour 30, something like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's a longer episode. There wasn't anything stopping Obi-Wan from doing that, but for whatever reason, they're just like half hour done. We're good.
Except for material.
Yeah, exactly. So with Stranger Things, one of the most fundamental elements of good writing is it's not complicated. It's called setup and payoff, right? You set something up and then you pay it off later. And so the death of a character, whether it be a minor character or a major character, is the payoff to all the character development that you set up introducing this character. Now in Stranger Things season 4, there are 3 victims of the main bad guy early on in the show. And this not only establishes the threat that the bad guy poses, but it also kind of shows like how horrific these deaths are going to be. And so every time you see like, the bad guy's targeted a new guy, you're like, oh,
yeah,
he's gonna suffer. He does not have a good future in store for him.
His future is like Wade.
He's got no future.
Well, Wade got off easy, man. He blew up. The Stranger Things guys, they get all their bones broken. They get their eyes sucked out of their head. I mean, it's really like horrific.
It really is.
It is.
And what's interesting about the way that the Duffer Brothers went about doing that is that each victim of the main bad guy, so there are 3 before we get to Max, right? And I guess there's going to be spoilers for.
This is all spoilers.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. So with each victim of the main bad guy in Stranger Things season 4, they spend at least 1 or 2 episodes kind of like introducing the character and showing the main character's relationships with these characters and kind of like their fear and their confusion and like what's going on with them. And in some cases, like with the kid who dies at the lake, for instance, the 3rd victim, like we've spent I think like 4 or 5 episodes with him, like just as a minor character before like we see him die. So each victim, like we get more and more time with. And by the time we get to Max, we're just like, I don't know how she's going to get out of this, right? Because like we've seen, we the rule of 3, we've seen this happen 3 times before, and like we have no idea like how to fight back against this main bad guy. But with each successive death of like the characters that these minor characters that we've
hold on, Max actually happens before the basketball player.
Does she?
Okay.
He does. The basketball player comes. Max would have been the 3rd. And then they figured out, and the basketball player is next.
Oh, that's right. Maybe like
yes,
maybe I think so.
I just rewatched it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm getting my time frames mixed up, but regardless,
it's confusing. It's a lot.
So like we see these characters die, and they die really horrifically. And it's not so much that we care that these characters died because they're not main characters, but we care about how the main characters react to losing these people, right? So like we have like the new Dungeons and Dragons guy witness the cheerleader death and how that affected him and how like horrified he was. And then we saw what's her name, Nancy, and how she reacted to like her like little sidekick's death and stuff like that. And so basically what the writers are doing in the case of Stranger Things, is they're taking these minor characters, they're making you care about them because you know that they're doomed and like there's like crazy stuff going on and like they die such horrific deaths that's an undeserved misfortune. So like you instantly empathize with them,
Right.
but you feel their loss through the characters that you've spent 4 seasons connecting with, right? Like the main characters of the story. And so when Nancy is broken up about, you know, her friend dying, like we're like we feel her emotion as the audience more poignantly than if it was just like, oh, we just watched this character die. And so the problem with Kenobi is like they didn't take any time to set up these characters. Like I think I talked about in my breakdown that, like, let's say that Wade and Kumail Nanjiani and all these guys who are involved with the Path were in the show from episode 1, where they're on Tatooine, they're trying to get that random Jedi guy safely away from the Inquisitors. And when the Inquisitors show up, like everything goes to crap, and these guys are scrambling to try to rescue the Jedi. And Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of gets roped in to helping them out. And then we spend like 4 episodes, you know, getting to know these guys and seeing like how much they're sacrificing and what their motivations are and all this other stuff. And then Wade dies in episode 4, and you're like I like the snappy sidekick Wade with the witty banter, like he died, oh my god, that's terrible. And then like when his friends are mourning him and stuff like that, that is when it resonates with the audience, like, oh my god, you know, he died. Right now it's just kind of like Porkins from A New Hope, right? It's like everyone loves Porkins, and then like he dies and like, oh man, Porkins died, man, that sucks. But if the filmmakers, if the storytellers really wanted it to resonate with the audience, they should have spent a little bit more time developing these characters and giving us an emotional attachment to them. And that way, when a character finally dies, like we can, like if Obi-Wan was grieving Wade, you know, like we'd be like, oh man, I feel Obi-Wan's pain. Oh, but when Wade died, Obi-Wan was just like, who's that? You know, I don't remember Wade. So like it's just it's a difference in like the care that went into the forethought of setting this stuff up and paying it off. With Obi-Wan Kenobi, you have very little setup, and then when they pay it off, they're like, hey, this is a big payoff in the audience. This is I don't get it. With Stranger Things, they spend a lot of time setting stuff up, and so when they do pay it off, it's a much more satisfying experience for the audience.
Absolutely.
Well, and something I was thinking about too, like once again, if we're comparing here, like, and I think a lot of people have brought this up, but it's just like the way Stranger Things has the ability to bring in a new character that you don't really know that much. You know, like, I mean, I know Eddie's getting to be more of a character.
But I listened to when he was saying say again how you get the audience to like a character, because I was thinking of Eddie.
I feel like that's what I was going to say too, just a random compliment here. But like I said on one of your videos, I'm always like, I learned so much from this guy. Like it's you just break it down in a way that's, I think, kind of easy for people to understand.
You know, a lot of people know that there's something wrong with what they're watching, but they don't always know how to verbalize it. And so when they hear someone verbalize it, they're like, oh, okay, that's what I was thinking. I just didn't know that I was thinking that.
It's kind of satisfying.
It is.
Yeah, and the 4 things that we talk about where we create instant connection with character are you make them the recipient of an undeserved misfortune, you put them in immediate jeopardy, you make them funny, or you make them really good at what they do. And those are like
it makes so much sense though.
Like, and Eddie is put in danger by the end of the first one. He's there witnessing it and then accused of murder.
Well, think about the introduction of Eddie, right?
Yeah,
like he's really good at what he does, the dungeon master stuff, and he's funny. Right?
Yeah.
So like you're kind of like, oh, this is an interesting character, and then he's put in, undeserved misfortune, and he's put in danger. So the Duffer Brothers did all 4 of those things to make you love a character with this new character right off the bat, and they're very consistent with that. Whenever they introduce a new character, they always use like this technique in order to get you to identify with them really quick.
Well, that makes me think, even say with like Yuri, the guy that double crossed him, he's funny.
He was funny.
So they at least like get you there.
Well, not that he's kind of a scumbag enough that you're kind of like whatever with Yuri, you know, but it's like And what the other one I was really going to get to, like, just even the guard.
Yes.
Like, by the end of it, like, I heard Nina from Nina Infinity saying, it was just like, I was kind of laughing because I felt the same way. She's like, I want everything to work out for him. I want him and his son to come back to America and live with it. And I'm like, I know, like, how do they do that? That it's like, you care. But they put him in kind of, I mean, yes, he gambled, but he got put in an unfortunate situation and he's helping one of our protagonists. So it's like, boom, we care about him.
And he's pretty good at what he did because he survives the fight.
Yeah.
Well, he's the man of many faces, right? Like he.
That's true.
Jacquin Hagar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I knew he was familiar
with the mustache. You know, he's got another face on, mustache face. Yeah, you know, like if you look at like all the new characters that are introduced in season 4 of Stranger Things, it's all handled very, very well. Like even like the characters that die, like Nancy's little intern there who you know eventually you know ends up getting like torn apart. Like he's kind of snarky, he's kind of funny, but he's also like really good at like what he does at the newspaper and stuff like that. And so like there are lots of different ways to go about kind of like using those 4 techniques I shared with you guys to introduce new characters. And you know, there's a little bit of that in Obi-Wan, like when we meet Kamal Nanjiani's fake Jedi character in episode 2. Like he's very good at pretending to be a Jedi, and he's kind of funny. And but the thing is like they don't utilize him. So like they have one scene where we meet him, and what would have been the correct way to go about doing this is that Obi-Wan, once he exposes him as a fraud, recruits him to help be his guide through the city and lead him to Leia. And so he becomes kind of like the unofficial sidekick of Obi-Wan. And when Leia learns that he's a fake Jedi, she assumes Obi-Wan is a fake Jedi, and that's why she runs away. And so, you know, you make him an integral part of the narrative for episode 2. And we learn about his character throughout the course of like 48 minutes or something like that, instead of like the 2 minutes of screen time that he gets. And that makes him a much more interesting character. And I would have even had him leave with Kenobi so like he could be in other episodes and we could learn more about him and we could have that comic relief and stuff like that. And he could actually finally get to see like what a real Jedi looks like. And he's disappointed because Obi-Wan sucks, you know? So like there could be like, or he could be the catalyst that inspires Obi-Wan to become like a Jedi again, because this guy just loves Jedi so much. And he's so optimistic about it. So like, there's ways that you could have done that with that character, but instead we get like, I think like 3 or 4 scenes of him. And one of those scenes, like he basically just somehow magically knows where Reva is and he confronts her and she just pulls Kenobi's location. So he basically failed in the very thing he was trying to do, which was try to allow Kenobi time to escape. And he just ends up having like his mind raped and like her finding out where he is. So like it's little things like that where like you never want the audience to be smarter than the characters that they're watching on the screen.
Right.
It's the horror movie trope, right? It's like, don't open that door, like run, bitch, run, get to the police, you know? It's that thing where it's like if the audience, because there's always going to be a section of your audience that are critical thinkers. Like there's some people who are just going to sit there, turn their brain off and just watch whatever it is you put in front of them, and they'll either like it or hate it or whatever. But there's always going to be a segment of the audience that's sitting there thinking about what it is they're seeing and processing it. And if they feel that the characters are acting stupidly, like more stupid than they would act in that same situation, then what you're doing is you're breaking the suspension of disbelief and you're pulling people out of your narrative. And that's when people start getting really critical. They start nitpicking at stuff. They start looking for other stuff to be critical about. And that's kind of the genesis of people hating what it is that they're consuming in terms of entertainment. And so you always want to tell a story in a way where you get rid of those things that break the suspension of disbelief. And a big part of that is having characters act stupid. And like, you know, you saw this with Baby Leia, you saw this with with the fake Jedi. You basically see this in every episode of Kenobi, where you have characters acting like really dumb and really illogically, and it really really breaks immersion for at least the critical section of the audience. And you don't want to do that. And if you look at Stranger Things, no one in Stranger Things season 4 acts illogically. Right?
Yes.
They all act very consistent with what an intelligent person would do in that situation. And it's not something where it's like, you know, like I think I was talking about my problem with Leia running away in episode 2. My co-host Alex on the Salty Nerd podcast, he's got 3 kids, and he's like, dude, do you have kids? You turn around for a minute and like they just run away. And I'm like, there's a difference between real life and a constructed narrative, where with a constructed narrative, real life doesn't really play a role. I mean, like, we're not going to a different planet in reality with a space wizard who's going to rescue a princess. Like that's a fictional thing. And so if you're writing fiction, you have the benefit of not having to be in reality. As long as what you do is logical and makes sense within the context of the story, you can get away with anything you want. And you have to understand that when you're making a movie or a TV show or writing a book or telling any type of story, you have to keep your audience in mind. And like, if you know what your audience wants and how they process things, then you can give them that and make them happy with it. Right. But if you don't understand your audience, if you're just like, well, my kid ran away yesterday, and so like, I'm going to make baby Leia run away. It's like, dude, come on.
But even with that, what gets me in that scene, especially the first time she outruns her captives in the first episode.
She has such a cute little run. I mean,
but she's like a toddler.
It's not quick though.
Here's my point. It's one thing if he turns around and she's gone. That's what kids do. If they're not, they can do that.
Yeah.
But in this case, in the first episode, she literally is just doing like a 40-yard dash and beating all the people who are paid to get the child.
They're just like,
well, also, like, the other thing is, the minute that she starts running out of that alley away from Obi-Wan, as a Jedi, he could have just lifted her up with the Force, brought her back, and she'd have been like, oh, you really are a Jedi. Guess I'm not going to run away now.
Yeah.
I mean, like the whole thing also, so there are things called like story consistency, like basically, once you set the rules of a universe within the story that you're consuming or watching or whatever, you have to be consistent with those rules. And if you change those rules, there has to be a good reason behind those changes. This is called the reason why. Everything you do as a storyteller, as a writer, has to have a reason behind it. And so we've had 40 plus years of reasons why behind the Force working and Jedi doing what they do and stuff like that. So there are a lot of rules that have already been established. And when it comes to Obi-Wan, they're very inconsistent with Obi-Wan's relationship with the Force, right?
Yes.
So like, he's on Tatooine. He's supposed to be there guarding Luke and getting ready to teach him when the time is right. And he's also supposed to be there, with the assignment from Yoda to learn how to commune with Qui-Gon in order to get to the point where he can become one with the Force and all this other stuff that happens in episode 4 of, A New Hope. And so like, he's supposed to be able to be using the Force during this down period. And yet he's also cut himself off from the Force, and he refuses to use it. And he's somehow forgotten how to use the Force. And it's one of those things where it's just like, these two things don't jive with each other. Either he's a Jedi who used the Force since he was a kid, he was a youngling, he went up through the ranks, like he's a Jedi master. How does he forget how to use that without consciously shutting himself down? Or he's still tapped into the Force and he just chooses not to use it, but he can use it when he needs to. And so like, if that's the case, then like, he Force pulls, Princess Leia back to him. He uses Force pushes to disable the, stormtroopers instead of surrendering to them. He uses the Jedi mind trick to get past sticky situations. Like, there's a lot of stuff that the Force was like a get out of jail free card for him that he could have used. But he didn't. And it's because, he's old and he's shut himself off from the Force and he's not the Jedi he used to be. But he's still supposed to be the Jedi he used to be for the sake of Luke. I mean, that's his whole mission on Tatooine.
Well,
so it's like, what are you doing here, writers? Like, give us like a logical explanation one way or the other.
Well, and it's very inconsistent with the Obi-Wan Kenobi that even Lucas set up in the prequels, who was by the books, a very by the books type of guy. So when Yoda gives him the assignment he gives him, I just don't believe he would ever cut himself off from the Force, because he's a by the book Jedi. Like, that's just who he is. So why would you cut yourself off from the Force? I know they have to hide, but as you said, you don't have to use it publicly. I mean,
also another big issue is that they're using the prodigal hero trope, right? And this is something that goes all the way back to the book of, the Bible, where you have Moses, who was like this prince, and he was like, Prince of Egypt, and he had all this power, and then like he falls from grace, and he comes out and he reluctantly leads, like his people to safety and all this other stuff. And that's where this trope originates from. And they actually tried this in The Last Jedi with Luke, with the prodigal hero, where basically he's a broken man, he's at his bottom, and then like he comes back at the end and he saves the day and he recaptures his former glory. Supposedly. And I was like, that went over like a ton of bricks in The Last Jedi. Why are they reusing this trope? When you have a character that is as beloved as someone like Luke Skywalker or Obi-Wan Kenobi, the last thing you want to do is tear them down and revisit them in a way where like they're not the character that the audience remembers and loves. What you want to do is you want to make them like Superman or Captain America, where they are stalwart in their values and their their likability. It's like they don't change, even though, and the conflict, there's this argument. It's like, oh well, if they don't change, then they're boring because there's no character development. But the thing that like Captain America, Superman, like all these characters that makes them interesting is that they're faced with situations that test their resolve in their ideals and their beliefs and being who they are and what they stand for, and they overcome those obstacles, and they remain like the characters that we know and love. And so when it comes to Obi-Wan Kenobi, if they had started this season with him at his, like, okay, maybe he doesn't use the Force all that much, but he's still the Obi-Wan we remember from like the prequels and the Clone Wars and all this other stuff. And we get to see him put in situations where, he's being tested, like, oh, I can't leave Luke, but, like I have to save Leia, or like something like that. The audience would be eating it up, but instead we get this sad, pathetic, washed up old guy that, like he doesn't even look even remotely like Sir Alec Guinness at this point. And it's depressing, and and audiences don't like to be depressed.
We don't.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when it comes to a character that literally has decades of history behind them that people grew up watching and loving and wanting to see more of. Like this is the triumphant return of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Are you kidding me?
Doesn't feel very triumphant.
and everyone's like, oh, well, you haven't seen the whole season yet. Like, wait until episode 6. And I'm like, look, it doesn't matter. You wait till episode 6, and he completes that journey of the prodigal hero where he returns to his former glory by the end of episode 6. The damage has been done by then. It might be different if they had released all 6 episodes at once, so you could binge through it and kind of go along the journey with Obi-Wan. But because they're doing it week to week, you're literally giving the audience time to seethe and hate and despise this character that they grew up loving, or at least the handling of him. And so like you're actually, Lucasfilm is actually working against itself in this respect, because like they're just giving more people time to kind of linger with this terrible version of Obi-Wan that nobody wants, so.
Well, and something else I wanted to get your opinion on. So again, comparing and contrasting. I don't know about you, but I feel like whoever is writing the scripts, they don't understand Vader, because Vader never when I say sounds like, I don't mean his voice. What he says never sounds like Vader. Like Vader in the original trilogy, he would make lines like, he's as stupid as he is clumsy. There was a humor to Vader to a degree, but also an intimidation to Vader. And I don't know about you, but I was texting our brother, and I told him, like, the dude who plays One and Vecna is so much creepier and intimidating than Vader.
Well, he was like making the kid actors and stuff cry on set before they even
Jamie Campbell Bower. Did you guys ever see The Mortal Instruments?
I haven't.
No.
Yeah, so like he's the star of that movie.
Okay.
It's terrible. I would recommend you watch it. But he is the like that's where, when I saw his name pop up on the credits, because I didn't know anything about Stranger Things 4 before I watched it, I was like, oh, the guy from Mortal Instruments is in this movie. It might be bad. But then he showed up, and I was like, oh, he's fine. He's fine.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I was just gonna say, like, can you give your thoughts on how they make One? Because from the moment he shows up, morning there, sleepyhead, he's creepy. Like there's something you're like, I don't trust this dude. And then, of course, Vecna's creepy in general. how did they make?
Well, even his physical appearance
Yes.
kind of helps him, like just his bone structure and his large blue eyes that are almost haunting. Like when they, so I mean, some of it's his physical appearance, and his credit to his acting.
Well, so let's even just go him and 11 scene at the very end, as we're figuring out as the audience that he is that one is Vecna and is also a part of that family, the Krill family. Why does that have so much impact and feel so intimidating? And Darth Vader, has yet to feel intimidating to me at all in this show. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. So first of all, this comes down to story planning, right? The Duffer Brothers, with each season of Stranger Things, they plot out the overall series before they even start writing it, right? So like this is from a storytelling perspective, this is called outlining. And you have two different types of writers that I found. You have what we call pantsers, who are people who write by the seat of their pants, and they're just people who they start writing and they just let the story kind of organically flow from them, and they enjoy that process of discovery as like it surprises them as they come up with it and all this other stuff. And then you have people who are called the plotters or the outliners, and they're the ones who kind of sit down and they work out what the story is going to be before they even start writing. And it's kind of simple. Like you just hit up like the main story beats that you want to hit. It's like this person dies and then like this thing happens and blah, blah, blah. And once you have those major beats, you can place them in the proper spot within like the meta context of the story, and then fill in the gaps in between. And this is how a lot of outliners work. And with the Duffer Brothers, they basically approach each season of Stranger Things as a long movie. Right.
Yeah.
It's not episodic. Each episode leads into the next, and you can look at each episode as an act, right? As an act of the story. And so everything fits together within the context of the broader season. And it's not like, back in the day when you had syndicated TV and stuff like that, you had to be episodic because syndicators would show stuff out of order. And so like, it was kind of like a rare thing to have like a two-parter that you had to put in order and stuff like that. But the idea was, every episode can stand on its own. And that's not the case with something like Stranger Things. Like you have to watch every episode in order or else you're going to be lost. And that's because it's part of a broader story. And so one of the brilliant things about the new villain Vecna is that the brothers kind of plotted out things enough so that at the beginning of the season, you think that 11 was the one responsible for that massacre, right?
Yeah.
They set that up to make you think that. And throughout the course of the season, we get other hints that kind of that reinforce that idea that 11 was the one responsible for that massacre. And we get introduced to this Ward, who's like, the one who's befriending 11 and kind of like being her unofficial mentor and stuff like that. Yeah, he looks creepy, but like he's nice, whereas like all the other kids are like mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
like
you're creating
an angelic side to him about his face, but then it can like so it's the way he works, I guess.
And you're creating empathy with this character, and you see him being tortured by the doctors at some point, right? And because 11 sees that, and so like undeserved misfortune, put in jeopardy, and because he's like trying to help a character that we've spent 4 seasons knowing and loving, like we're instantly like being drawn to him, being like, okay, this is a good guy, and then at the end they do the twist, and they reveal that he was manipulating 11 all along. He's actually the bad guy. Not only is he the bad guy, but he's also this horrific monster that we've been afraid of since the beginning of the season. And that was like the big reveal, is that like he's like, this guy is not only, the bad guy who did like the massacre at the beginning, but he's been the big bad of the season all along. And this was his origin story. Mm-hmm. And like when you get to episode 7 and you discover that, you're just like, oh my God, my head explode. Right. And so like unbeknownst to the audience, they've actually been seeing the development of a brand new villain, the general of the mind destroyer,
the mind flayer,
the mind flayer. The entire season, they didn't even know it, and when that reveal happens, you're like, "Oh my God, that was brilliant!" Because it was set up and payoff, right?
Yes.
So contrast that with Kenobi, right? So we've already gotten Vader's origin story.
Yes.
We already know how Vader dies. And so this is kind of like something that's in between there. And it also goes against canon, which is a big problem, which is like, Obi-Wan was not supposed to meet Vader until, their final showdown on the Death Star. So number one, you've got a consistency error right there. But number two, like one of the things I always liked about Darth Vader is that he was a very intelligent villain.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like in The Empire Strikes Back, he wasn't just someone who walked through the hallway cutting people down with a lightsaber. He was a guy who set up traps, who hit all the pressure points, who knew how to basically, take down our heroes. And he did it methodically and he did it masterfully. The fact that he's also a physical threat definitely plays a role. But if you think about it, until the final act of Return of the Jedi, we didn't see Vader do a lot of action, right? He had his one fight with Obi-Wan with the lightsabers, and that was pretty much it. I think if you want to count him flying, his TIE Advanced through the trenches of the Death Star as action, I guess you could argue that, but it wasn't really like him being at the end of Rogue One where he's going down the hall, just like killing people left and right, So like it's one of those things where I think that modern Star Wars writers look at Vader as being brutal and violent, as opposed to being a criminal or evil mastermind, evil genius.
Yeah. Okay.
And the thing about Vader is that the thing that makes him so threatening is his presence, his looming presence, right? Because he's the boogeyman, he's the living shadow, he's the demon. He's the guy who, like, when he shows up, that you're in trouble or that you're already dead.
He is the danger.
Yeah. He is the one who knocks, right?
Yes.
So with Vader, like, if you look at how like the original trilogy portrayed him, him just showing up was enough to instill fear in people.
Yes.
The first scene where the stormtroopers break into the Corvette and shoot their way through, and then like everything's white and you just see this huge black figure like walk in and just like look around. He doesn't even say anything. He's just breathing. He's just like, walks through the hallway. It's like, oh man, what a great introduction to that character. And with Obi-Wan, you have all this setup from the prequels, right? Where like they had their battle at Mustafar. He leaves Anakin to die. And then Anakin becomes Darth Vader. And Obi-Wan has never faced his former apprentice in the form of Darth Vader before. And in this season of Kenobi, 3 episodes in, we get this unearned confrontation between Vader and Obi-Wan, where Vader just freaking wipes the floor with him, right? Even though like they were pretty evenly matched in Revenge of the Sith.
Yes.
So I guess you could make the argument that while Obi-Wan cut himself off from the Force and became, pathetic, Vader continued to learn how to use the dark side and became more powerful. But the thing is like there was so little setup to this confrontation that it rang very hollow, right? And there was also a lot of and there was also a lot of plot inconsistencies with their confrontation, where it's like, okay, Vader has the strength to lift him up with the Force and drag him through fire and stuff like that. But the minute a slow moving droid shows up to pick him up and take him away, he can't crush the droid. He can't pull Obi-Wan back through the fire to him. He can't use the Force to extinguish the fire. He can't walk around. He can't bother to walk around the fire. Yeah. I mean, he can't throw his lightsaber and cut him in half. Yeah, I mean, we opened the scene with him.
He couldn't go walk around the fire.
Yeah, we opened the scene with Vader walking through that village and just randomly Force pulling and snapping people's necks and stuff like that. So you're telling me he can't do that to Kenobi? Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of mental gymnastics online where people are like, oh, he wants Kenobi to suffer, so he doesn't want to kill him right away, and all that other stuff. It's like, yeah, but he can make him suffer by capturing him. He doesn't have to kill him right there, but he could pull him over and be put him in chains and I'm gonna tickle him with my lightsaber or something like that. I mean, the thing is there was very little setup to that confrontation. and the
Okay,
payoff was
is
very
that
bad.
why I felt nothing? Because
Yeah.
I think what baffled me
We're
about
coming
that,
to you with our movie and
yeah.
show questions
I
as to
think-
why we feel the way.
I think what baffled me about their confrontation is if you think about Star Wars confrontations, and even in Rebels or Clone Wars and cartoons, when there's a big, whether it's Ahsoka and Vader and Rebels, what makes the lightsaber battles epic and like Star Wars worthy is when there's an emotional attachment, like there's
'Cause
something deeper.
There has to be emotion in anything. I was saying
Yes.
that to her, and I know, maybe as a female or whatever, if you want to say maybe that affects it, but like if there's not some kind of emotional connection in anything I'm watching, I'm not really gonna be a fan, or it's not gonna hold my attention.
Well, and what I'm getting to, what I'm asking,
and I know, yeah,
is it just bad writing, or was it bad just execution? Why, when Obi-Wan meets Vader for the first time since Mustafar, why did I feel absolutely nothing at their reunion?
Because there was no real setup for it.
Yeah.
So like I want you to think about Empire Strikes Back for a second, right? So we spend the first half of the movie with Luke training to be a Jedi.
Mhm.
And when he finds out his friends are in trouble, he's like, I gotta go save my friends. And Yoda's like, you're not ready. And he's like, I don't care. I have to save my friends. They're in danger. And so we, the audience, know, like, okay, number one, Luke has some training, but he's not ready to face Vader, but he's going to do it anyway. And so that whole segment there of him going to Cloud City from the beginning of the movie to that point is set up for this confrontation with Vader. And like, we have that scene in the cave where like cuts off Vader's head and it's actually like his face and like all this other stuff. There's buildup to this final confrontation with Vader. And the Jedi are based off of like the old Kurosawa samurai films that George Lucas like really admired and stuff like that. And in samurai films, when two warriors pull their swords, one of them is going to die.
Okay.
Right? So there's physical jeopardy involved. And whenever you see two Jedi face off with lightsabers, someone's going to die because that's a duel to the death, essentially. And I'm not talking about like fighting droids or like, like whatever. Like when two Jedis ignite their lightsabers and they're going to go toe to toe, bad stuff is going to happen to at least one of them, right? Like we saw that with Qui-Gon, we saw that with Darth Maul. We see that throughout the course of the movies, and with the original trilogy, Obi-Wan dies in his confrontation with Vader in Episode 4, and when it comes to Empire Strikes Back, the only reason Luke survives is because Vader is trying to turn him to the dark side. He could have killed Luke at any point in time, and he messed him up. Like Luke had serious physical injuries from that battle. So like it cost Luke to do that. And Vader, being as skilled as he was, like he didn't want to kill his son because he looked at his son as a method with which to overthrow the Emperor and gain more power. And so like, that was his motivation for just not straight up killing Luke like right away. He was kind of toying with him. And then like in Return of the Jedi, you have that big buildup to the final act where you have the final fight between Vader and Luke, and look at what happens to Vader. Like Luke eventually defeats him, but in defeating him, he also kind of reawakens the father in him, and he redeems himself, essentially. But every
like
time,
one of my favorite scenes of all time, talk about emotion, like it makes me tear up every time. Seriously.
And at that point, Luke's not just trying to save his father, but when Vader reveals that he knows about Leia, now Luke is fighting for his sister as well. So like there's a lot of stuff going on there where like the lightsaber battles that we see that we care about have a lot of emotion attached to them, and they're built up to, like, remember in Episode 1, throughout the course of the movie we see Darth Maul, and it's like, oh, this guy's cool. He's got a double-bladed lightsaber, and he's hunting these guys down, and like they have to run away from him, and blah blah blah. And so like there's a lot of setup for Darth Maul, and by the time Obi-Wan fights Darth Maul Maul has killed his mentor. Like he's established that he's a big threat, and so like there's stuff to that fight where you're just like, when Obi-Wan eventually wins, you're like, whoa, like that was a good fight. We don't see that for like the rest of the trilogy really until we get to Obi-Wan versus Anakin. And even then, it's kind of like boring because we know the outcome. It's about, okay, Obi-Wan wins, which is one of the problems with prequels to begin with.
Yeah.
But the idea here is that the fight between Obi-Wan and Vader, the rematch, I guess you could say, really comes down to a lack of suitable setup. Like it should have been something that was built up to over the course of all 6 episodes.
Yes.
And I think what they're doing is they're like, okay, this is the midpoint of the season. We're going to have Vader kick his butt. And then in episode 6, Obi-Wan is back to like his former power level, and he has another fight with Vader, and he schools Vader, and he's like, you still have a lot to learn. And and that way in episode 4, like when they meet again, Vader can say that line, when last we met I was but the learner, now I'm the master, and it makes sense, right? But in my honest opinion, they shouldn't have had Vader in this season at all. Vader should have been in the background somewhere, kind of like how they use him in Rogue One, where like he shows up and like kind of like schools Krennic and then like disappears. I would have rather they take the character of Reva, and really developed her as the main antagonist for Obi-Wan to fight against, and that way like they give the due respect to that character, that new character. And we create like a new kind of rivalry with like a new antagonist and someone for Obi-Wan to kind of like maybe try to save or something like that. Like it just makes more sense that they would have introduced a new antagonist as opposed to bringing back in Vader. But I think they were thinking like, oh, think of all like the Star Wars fangasms we're going to get if we have Vader fight Kenobi again. And it's just like, if you're going to do that, do it right. And they didn't do it right.
No, they didn't do right
This
at all.
shouldn't be a one-night stand.
But what I think some of it was just kind of, it's like you're saying, there's not enough setup, because it's like Obi-Wan's there and then boom, out of nowhere, Vader's on the same planet. And you're just like oh,
it wasn't
okay.
earned.
If you think about the reveal of Vader, so first of all, I don't know why Obi-Wan didn't know that Darth Vader / Anakin wasn't still alive or like whatever, but I'm not going to get into that. But so at the end of episode 2 of the series, they show Darth Vader and his bacta tank and stuff like that, and like that's like the big reveal. It's like, oh, Vader's here, and then like the very next episode is the showdown. Right? Yeah. Now, if the Duffer Brothers were making Obi-Wan Kenobi, that shot at the end of episode 2, where like you see Vader in the bacta tank, that would have been the final stinger of the last episode of season 1.
Yes,
and the confrontation with Vader and Obi-Wan would have happened at the end of season 2 or possibly the end of season 3. It would have been built up over multiple seasons to have that payoff. Right? Because you want to have that type of payoff over and it probably would have been a longer season, right? Instead of just 6 episodes. But the fact that like they have that stinger at the end of episode 2, and by the middle of episode 3, you're having this face off with Vader, like there's literally like the most rushed setup you could have possibly done for that type of payoff, and the payoff didn't even make any sense. Like just seeing like Obi-Wan run away for like a good 4 minutes, I'm like, what are you doing with this show? Oh my god,
it was bad,
really bad.
Like you could have found a homeless bum off the street and could have written a better scene than that. I mean, it's ridiculous. The thing that kills me, ladies, is that there's so many talented people in Hollywood who would saw off their own arm to work on a Star Wars TV show, and they can't find a single one to come in and handle, especially something like Obi-Wan should be a home run for this film, and they just keep screwing it up, and it boggles my mind. It absolutely boggles my mind.
Well, and that's why I wanted to have you on today, because Kenobi, I mean, Book of Boba Fett was really bad. I'm just going to forget that and move on. But Kenobi, it just shouldn't be this bad. Like this should, as you said, it should have been.
Like it was set up for success.
It should have been a slam dunk. Had there just been some good writers who, like the Duffer Brothers, actually really love and care what they're working on. And then I think Obi-Wan could have been a massive hit, where now, most people that I talk to, they're like, it's okay. Like,
I think the big issue with Book of Boba Fett was that it was rushed and it was done during the COVID restrictions.
Yes.
And so like there was a lot of stuff that like they didn't have time to properly kind of like figure out and do right with the Book of Boba Fett. But at the same time, I kind of like the Book of Boba Fett. Like no, it's not the best show in the world, but there were aspects of it that I enjoyed, and I kind of look at it as just like Mando season 2.5.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a lot of missed opportunities there, but at the same time, it's kind of like I don't care about Boba Fett as much as I care about someone like Obi-Wan. And when you have a situation where Kathleen Kennedy basically puts the brakes on Obi-Wan Kenobi because like they need to redo their script, and it basically went on indefinite hiatus.
And this is what we did.
Yeah, like they had so much time to like give the scripts like the proper attention that they deserved, and like this is what they came up with. And that's why I think I was telling you before we went live that it almost feels like they had shot part of this season before the hiatus happened, and like they were stuck with using the footage they already shot and trying to make it fit with like the new stuff that they had written. I don't think that's actually the case, but that's what it feels like. And
it's that bad.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. And if you look at like the guy behind this, like they had the original script writers when this was like going to be a movie, and then like they changed it to a TV show. But the guy who's kind of leading the charge on the rewrites, his name's Joby Harold, and he wrote King Arthur: Legend of the Sword, which was a mess of a movie. I don't know if you ever saw that. It's a Guy Ritchie movie. No. And he also wrote Army of the Dead by Zack Snyder, which was also a train wreck. Yeah. And he's also the writer of Transformers: Rise of the Beasts and the Flash movie with Ezra Miller. And from what I've seen so far of Kenobi and what I know of Army of the Dead and King Arthur: Legend of the Sword, I wouldn't let this guy anywhere near Star Wars. And I don't know why he got hired to do this. I mean, like he's a producer on John Wick, but like, I don't know like how much creative input he had onto that stuff. But as a writer, he's proven that he doesn't know what he's doing. I think he's also the guy who said like he never watched episode 3. So like, the whole thing about Obi-Wan not knowing that Anakin was alive was like, like his fault. So like, it was just weird.
Yeah, that's kind of pathetic. Again, that just comes back to, and again, the Duffer Brothers feel kind of old school in the sense that they really care about what they're doing. Like there's a lot of passion in Stranger Things, and little details they keep up with, and they pay off at some point.
Well, I think there's a lot of passion in Lucasfilm for it too, but I just think that the people that they have working at Lucasfilm aren't nearly as talented as the Duffer Brothers are. One of the things that you have to understand is that when it comes to Hollywood and the production of movies and TV shows, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Like you can have a talented director, but if you have like a crappy producer who's like, put my girlfriend in the picture and she can't act, but she wants to be a star. Like there's little things like that can kind of derail movies, even like if you have the most talented people working on them. Yeah. But when it comes to TV, it's really a producer's medium, right? So like when you have multiple episodes that you have to oversee, it's the guy who's at the top who's like, making sure each episode gets made and gets put out on time and stuff like that. They're the person in charge. This is called the showrunner, right? The primary producer. And they bring in directors for hire to kind of do things. Whereas on a feature film, a director is kind of like the main creative visionary. Like they're the ones who kind of, their job is to not only, get the movie made and produced and stuff like that, but it's also to tell the story, right? Mm-hmm. To work with the actors, to get the performances, to make sure the script is right. And that's why talented directors can make really good movies. But when it comes to TV shows, you need talented producers. And I think it's proven that, and the producers are the ones that hire like the writers and give them the notes and tell them stuff. And typically showrunners are also the head writer. So they'll have like a writer's room and they'll assign people. It's like, okay, you do this episode, you do this episode. And then when the episode's turned in, they'll go through and they'll rewrite it and they'll put their own spin on things and stuff like that. That's just how TV works. So in this situation, I think a lot of people give Deborah Chow a little bit too much credit. Like she just kind of shows up and, tells people where to point the camera because that's TV directing, right? Yeah. When it comes to these writers, like who knows what the original scripts were like after like the showrunner got done with them. So it really comes down to the producer. Do you have a talented producer doing this stuff? And when it comes to the Duffer Brothers, they're not only talented producers, but they're talented storytellers. And when you're a talented storyteller, every aspect of the production process makes a lot more sense because like they have the creative vision for like the look and feel. They know what performances they want from the actors. They know that in the script form, how the entire story plays out. They see like the bigger puzzle picture, right? But before all the pieces are assembled, they know what it's supposed to look like. And so that way, like, they're just better at, crafting a story for people to consume. I think that one of the issues with Lucasfilm in particular is that Kathleen Kennedy made her career by working for some of the most legendary talents in Hollywood. You got Spielberg, you got Lucas, right? If you look at her filmography as a producer, every single one of her movies is either a Spielberg movie or a Lucas movie, right?
Yeah.
And so occasionally, like, you have a movie from her husband thrown in there. So when you spend your entire career working for Steven Spielberg, you're going to look like you know what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And when she first took over Lucasfilm, like, I remember a big thing about her was trying to find talent like Spielberg and giving them the freedom to play in the Star Wars universe. And so, like, I can remember when
J.J. Abrams.
When Disney first bought Star Wars, Kathleen Kennedy had a big plan for like how she was going to do the movie. So you had the primary sequel trilogy, which would come out every 2 years, right? So it was episode 7, then 2 years later, episode 8, then 2 years later, episode 9. And in between those, she was going to have character-centric Star Wars stories. So like the Han Solo standalone movie, there was going to be a Yoda standalone movie. There was going to be a Boba Fett standalone movie, and that there was going to be a Kenobi standalone movie. And those were kind of like the 4 Star Wars stories that they kind of had planned. And I think at that point she was developing scripts for all of them. And eventually the Boba Fett movie became The Mandalorian. They transitioned that into the TV thing. The Solo movie obviously came out, wasn't very good. I think the Yoda movie is DOA. I don't think they're doing that anymore. And the Obi-Wan movie became the show. And that's why when they announced it at D3, she was like, the scripts are already written. And it's like, they just took the feature script and cut it up, But the thing about her is that, so like, she thought that she could find this, young talent in Hollywood and just kind of like foster them and let them, do their thing. And the problem with that is that when you lack a creative vision for like the overall story of a franchise, it goes off in way too many directions. And you saw that with Lord and Miller on the Solo movie, where basically they were kind of out of control, going their own way. And she actually had to come in and fire them, which is not something that you do typically. And so like, and there was also Josh Trank, the guy who did Fan Four Stick. Like, originally he was going to do the Boba Fett movie, and he was like a young up and coming director in Hollywood. And so like, she was just trying to do what she'd always done with Spielberg, which is find a young talent and let them go off and do their thing. And that's how we got Rian Johnson. And that's how we got J.J. Abrams. And that's how we got Lord and Miller. And so like, she was relying on other more creative people to kind of take the reins and go off and do their thing. But she's not a creative. She's a logistical producer.
Yes.
Like she was the one who would like book the locations and make sure the trains ran on time and stuff like that. Any creative input she had on Spielberg's movies was always filtered through the genius of Spielberg,
Yes, definitely.
So now that she's in charge of an entire franchise, she doesn't have the cohesive vision to keep things on track. And she doesn't have the familiarity with the Star Wars lore that the fans require someone who's overseeing the franchise to have. Like with Kevin Feige came out of Marvel, the comics division. He was familiar with the comics. He was familiar with like all the characters. And that's what made him such the ideal choice to oversee the movies, is because he understood the comic books so well. With Kathleen Kennedy, you have her out there saying like, oh, we don't have books that we can like pull stories from. It's like, there's like a million different EU books out there that they decanonized. I mean, like there's just so much stuff that it's obvious that she doesn't understand the fandom. She doesn't understand the source material. She doesn't understand the creative process. She's just good at being like, that sounds like a good idea. Let me get money for it. And let's make this happen.
Yeah. And that's what Obi-Wan feels like, basically. I mean, when it's this poor, it just feels like a money grab situation. And I think that's why we're all disappointed. I mean, because as you said, it's like, this could be so much better, but it's bad. And
well, I mean, look at the Andor TV show, right?
Yeah.
So the showrunner of Andor is Tony Gilroy. And Tony Gilroy is the guy that came in and saved Rogue One. So Gareth Edwards had made Rogue One and botched it completely. And Tony Gilroy had to come in redo the entire third act. So like the entire battle with Scarif and stuff like that. That was all Tony Gilroy. He came in, he saved that movie.
Yeah.
Right? And Tony Gilroy is the one who's working on the Andor series. Like he's the showrunner. And Tony Gilroy has proven, number one, he understands Star Wars.
Yeah.
Number two, he's a very talented storyteller. And so I actually have a lot of kind of optimism for the Andor series.
I do
But
too. It looks better.
Yeah, you need someone like Tony Gilroy for everything, right? Like someone who understands the story and who could come in and kind of look at every single TV show and movie that they're doing and make sure that it's consistent with what came before it and is good, that it can stand on its own. And I think that one of the big issues with Obi-Wan is that it's lacking that kind of like competent showrunner who's also a good storyteller to oversee it and make sure that the character is treated properly. And so far it's not.
No, it's not. Well, thank you, Matt, so much for coming on and giving your expertise. Again,
I learned so much today.
I did too.
I always do.
I did too, and I think you were able to break down why, again, certain things work for Stranger Things and why they are failing miserably for Obi-Wan Kenobi. So we definitely appreciate you coming on. And those of you, definitely go check out the Salty Nerd podcast.
Yes, you'll enjoy it.
And Matt's breakdowns of each of the Kenobi episodes. They're worth going back and watching. They're quite funny.
You educate me and you make me laugh. I mean, what more could you ask for out of a YouTuber?
Well, that's what we try to do on our podcast, is we try to make people laugh and also teach them a thing or two occasionally.
Well, we learned today.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, and we hope you, the audience, we hope you've learned. Again, check out Salty Nerd. And if you are not yet, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Also give the video a thumbs up. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, remember to be a force of light. All right, bye guys.
All right.